Hello YouTube, in this tutorial we learn to create a cool pixelated mouse tail effect for our websites. Just remember the codes would be available on my Patreon. By joining my Patreon, you can receive the all tutorials as a template and get access to the full version of each tutorial. Hello guys, in this tutorial we learn how to create a pixelated tail effect for our mouse with a grid. Let me hide the all items. We basically have a very simple layout. There is a navigation bar which houses two elements, our logo and a button. The hardest part is sit below it. Basically our grid houses many cells which have an orange rectangle, so when we move our mouse over the cells, the orange rectangles appear, and when the mouse is not over them, the rectangles disappear. I have added the main content inside a separate div block. This div block houses a grid and also another div block which contains our hero text. Our grid has a width of 100% and height of 100 V, so we make sure it covers the whole screen. Also, our content wrapper has an absolute position. The same goes to our grid, but I have used a different z-index value for our grid. We want the grid be closer to the screen. The class names I have used here are important for our grid and mouse tail effect to work. Also, the grid has an ID. We don't want to set the values for our grid and the grid items inside Webflow directly. I used some codes to target the CSS values of each. Make sure the grid gap is set to 0 as we don't want any space between the cells. We set a background color for the grid items as this color will define the color of our mouse effect. I have added two libraries to use them. One is GSAP which will animate the mouse tail effect, and the other one is but it's not needed for the first part. As I have showed you earlier, we only have one grid item, but we are going to duplicate this item till we have our repetitions of them and they cover the whole grid. So depends on the size of our screen, you might have 90 cells for example. Item width and item height will adjust the size or rectangles. If you want to have more small square, use a lower value, but if you want to have bigger squares, use a higher value. The lines you see will create an array and duplicate the grid item inside each cell till they cover the whole grid. Now we use the GSAP library to animate the opacity of each cell item when the mouse is over them. We select each cell if the mouse is over them to set its opacity from 0 to 1, and duration of that is 0.3 seconds. When the mouse leaves the cell area, we wait for 0.1 seconds and the cell fades away. Also, these lines take care of the screen resize. If you resize your window, we want to make sure the rectangles still fit the whole screen, so we might need to lower the amount of our cells or increase them. We need to learn one more thing before the first part ends. I have used some sort of blending for my grid, as we don't the content which has a lower z-index value not be visible because the rectangles appear. We apply the blending mode directly to our grid, not the cell items. Make sure you keep this in mind. Thanks for watching. You can grab the codes or receive this tutorial as a template by joining my Patreon.